Hello, all of my I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. This is your host, Robyn Steckel. Today I have Erik Lundquist, who's the CEO of Great Plains Aviation. Great Plains Aviation is a 47-person FAA certified flight school, repair station, and ground handling operation across three airports in Minnesota and Wisconsin. He's also one of the first operators in the world to deploy a governed AI mind as a daily operating partner.
Hey, Robyn.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I love the background. Wow. Impressed.
For all of my listeners, the background is two planes that I got from Erik's website because we will be talking aviation today.
Very cool. Awesome.
Podcast listeners, please welcome Erik to the podcast. Thank you for joining today, Erik.
Yep. Glad to be here.
Interesting story. I met Erik on an airplane. I was flying out to do the Yosemite Half Marathon, flew from Madison up to Minneapolis, and at Minneapolis jumped on a plane for Salt Lake City and sat next to a gentleman. And as we were talking, I don't remember exactly what you said, Erik, but I thought it was really interesting. And as I always do, I keep asking more and more questions. This guy is probably like, who is this woman sitting next to me asking me all these questions? Just talked about AI. And then I had said, have you ever been interested in coming on a podcast? And he said, I have. And I said, that's great because I have a podcast and I'd love to have you on to talk about AI and how you use it. I thought very differently than any other AI concept I've already heard of. So here you are. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
So tell us about your earlier days on the Apple as you were telling me on the airplane how you
Yeah.
started on an Apple, and let's give the listeners a journey of your history.
Sure. Sure. Well, going all the way back to the beginning. So I was born in Edina, Minnesota, but I really grew up in Western Nebraska. My family moved out there early because of my dad's career in agricultural extension. So he was an entomologist and a county agent, and we eventually landed in Grant, Nebraska, a small town near the Colorado border. And that town really became home for me. It's when I think of my childhood, that's really where I grew up. So it was, a small town, 1,200 people, population, 27, classmates in my class. So, you grow up in a small town and you kind of do everything, right? So you know, I played sports, I was in the band, I did theater, I was an Eagle Scout, I did a lot of different things. And so that really, kind of formed a lot of my pathway of being interested in a lot of different things. So, but we moved out there, and my dad unfortunately was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 1976, and then he passed away about a year later, and I was 11 years old. So, when we think about, you know, obstacles and things, that was a pretty big one for me at an early age, being the oldest son and having your dad pass away. So, mom decided to stay in Grant, and that's where I grew up and went to high school. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my early story, if you will.
That's where you started. What was your first business? Smart HR, or was there a business previous to that?
Well, I started my first actual business was Smart HR, but that wasn't the beginning of my career. My career really started. Um, well, it was kind of going full circle with aviation. So out of college, I graduated with a degree in math education, but I was also a commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy with orders to go to flight school to be a pilot. And so that was in the late 80s. And I actually was commissioned and ended up being stationed at the ROTC unit at the University of Nebraska, where I was there for a period of time. I met my wife during that, and that was during the first Gulf War. And so during that time, as the military is notorious for doing, there's a ebb and flow of what they need in the military with pilots and depending on what's going on. And when you have a conflict going on, that they were looking for. They were kind of leaning things up, and I actually ended up having an opportunity to get out early. So I actually never went to flight school, and I ended up moving to Minnesota, and that's where I ultimately got married. And my first job was working for a fraternal benefit society called Lutheran Brotherhood in downtown Minneapolis. I got my first job working as a systems administrator doing local area network administration and things like that. So that's kind of where my career started. So it was technology. I got involved, interested in sales, and ultimately kind of left the technology that I did early in my career. And then for about 12 years, I did financial services. I was a broker. I did some management, sales management, and things like that. So it was, it kind of matched my background where I was interested in a lot of different things. So I was able to do the systems work, but also to be able to do selling and sell and do more management type things. So that's where my career really started. I didn't really get into um, kind of entrepreneurship until later. I I left the financial services business and actually went to work for a regional pharmaceutical company. It was a drugstore chain and drug wholesaler. It was actually my wife's family's business. So I came on as their chief financial officer, and it was during that tenure at A-Strip companies, A-Strip Drugs, Smartville, where I actually started to exercise the entrepreneurial muscle, if you will. And that's when Smart HR was born, as we were looking for opportunities for our business and to way to extend our business. And it was something that I thought was a great idea. And we ended up creating this company, Smart HR, which was ultimately an HR outsourcing business where we provided technology and expertise to smaller independent pharmacies across the country and providing them HR services and helping them with, those issues that come up in any business, and providing HR technology for them. So that was really my first business, Smart HR.
My question would be, it sounds like you didn't have a lot of experience in the entrepreneurial space. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean,
How
really, it was kind of the way I operate. I kind of learn as I go, and that's learning on the job training, so to speak. So I was fortunate well, when I was in financial services, in a lot of ways, when you work in financial services, you're an entrepreneur in a way because you have your own business. You know what the products are, but it's really up to you to go out and to sell them and to develop clientele. And so you can really be entrepreneurial in a lot of ways and looking at how do I get new customers? How do I streamline my processes in terms of running my book of business? And so that was really the beginning. So I learned, from being in financial services sales to, how to prospect, how to generate revenue, which is obviously in entrepreneurship a big thing, right? You got to generate, nothing runs until you sell something kind of thing. And so that was the beginning.
are
And
there,
then
I'll,
going
I'll
to
inter,
work.
I'll
Oh,
inter, I'll interrupt you real quick. Lots of my previous podcasts have been on, but how did you go about that? Did you read books? Did you have a mentor? how did you go about overcoming that barrier of not knowing the next steps? You knew where you wanted to go, just not how to get there. That's one of the biggest barriers that I have found is that people don't know how to break that. So even back then, how did you go about, you knew what you wanted, you weren't quite sure how to get there. It was new territory for you. What did you do? Or did you go to classes? Again, a mentor, books? How did you break that barrier of not knowing the next steps, but still getting to your goal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, really, it was, I've always been a resourceful person and being able to figure out a problem. And, the problem really was how do I get customers? And so, in the case of Lutheran Brotherhood, they have a system, they have a training, department, and they train you, okay, this is how you do things. But really, where you really get success is figuring out what works for you and what works for you. And for me, it was, going to classes, reading books. It was networking and working with other advisors to learn how they did things. But so it was a combination of all of those things, and made a lot of mistakes along the way. It's like you kind of figure out what works for you. And at the time, this is in the early 90s, it was dialing for dollars. It was, picking up the phone and cold calling and getting a list of potential customers and just going right through the list. Well, that was painful for me. That was like eating glass. That was like not how I was wired. And so I had to figure out different ways to prospect and to find business. And I did it through public workshops. I did a lot of public workshops because teaching was natural for me. Just that was my educational background, and I enjoyed teaching. And so that was the way I actually started to get customers at that phase of my life. So
Those are great tips for anybody who is looking to venture out and just don't know what they need to do to get to that next step. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, and it's at the end of the day, it's about not being afraid to fail and to try things, and that's always been how I've approached a lot of things in my life, and specifically technology. That's always been kind of the way I've approached technology way back to the beginning. You matched at the beginning, you had mentioned the Apple II. So, when I was in 10th grade, we had a programming class that I signed up for. And we had well, yeah, at Perkins County High School, we had, four Apple II computers that, we would program and do basic programming. And I wasn't afraid to break it. I mean, I was, to get in there and roll up my sleeves and try different things. And really, really enjoyed that. And it paid a lot of dividends, and it still does up to today. It's like not being afraid to jump in and not being intimidated.
I like that. Take us to, you implemented holacracy. Am I pronouncing that correctly or
Yeah,
incorrectly?
yeah. Yep. So when I started going back to Smart HR, so when we started Smart HR, I had the business was forming, and we were looking at different ways of, growing our business. And I was introduced, I read a book by a gentleman by the name of Tony Hsieh, and the name of the book is Delivering Happiness. And Tony Hsieh unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, but he was the creator of Zappos in Las Vegas. And Zappos had a customer service camp, essentially what they called it, where you could come in, you would take this class for 3 days at Zappos, and you'd learn the way they do things. And if your listeners don't know of Zappos, their whole culture is built around kind of a zany culture. It's all about employee culture, and so the customer service is really off the charts in terms of how they talk to their customers. And So anyway, I went to this class with Jess Anderson, who's a very close friend and was working for me at the time, and we went there to learn about culture and how do we develop that within Smart HR. And during um, that session, I was introduced to Holacracy, and Holacracy was the management system that Zappos was operating underneath. And it was this idea of self-management and distributed authority. And it just struck a chord with me. It was like, wow, that is really cool. And I want to learn more about that. And so I did. So I made a connection with Holacracy One, which was the company that had created the system. And I had hired a consultant for them to come out and teach our team about holacracy and how to make that work within our organization. So it was during that visit to Zappos in that introduction to this new wave management system, essentially by providing a structure to allow for humans to show up and work and fill roles that have a purpose and accountabilities. And there's strict domains and areas that are areas of responsibility. But it really allows for autonomy in making decisions in whatever role you fill within the organization. And so it moved away from this idea of top-down management, your typical hierarchy org chart where you have people reporting to people. The org chart within a holacracy powered organization looks very different. It's actually a map of the work and the roles that do the work. It has nothing to do with the role fillers and who reports to who. And that really resonated with me. And it was like, wow, that is really, really cool. And so we did. We took a big leap of faith and we adopted holacracy within Smart HR. And I had, great employees at the time, and they're like, what kind of crazy ideas Erik cooked up, but we'll come along for the ride. And we did it, and we learned a lot. Some things worked, some things didn't. But it was an incredible experiment that helped drive the way I lead and the way I run organizations all the way up to today. And it has a direct correlation with how I'm using AI, and we can get to that later. But um,
There one particular subset of that work or of that theory of self-governance that really struck you and have you've stayed with it through the entirety of the rest, not the rest of your career, but something that's really stuck with you, like a theory or some type of figment of that theory that you just really abide by.
yeah, I think for me, it's the idea of purpose and being purposeful and having everything in the organization hinge on that purpose and everything kind of pointing towards that. So how you hire, how you fire, how you go about, finding new customers and giving customer service. It's all in alignment with this overarching intent slash purpose of the organization and the way those purposes nest within an organization. So you have this overarching purpose of the organization, and you basically nest it down to all the different roles within the organization, but ultimately it all rolls up to that purpose. So for me, that was compelling, and it spoke to my core about who I am and how I live my life purposefully. And to run an organization that way was powerful, and not just giving it lip service saying, oh, this is our vision or this is our mission, but we still have, but actually building and engineering everything within the business towards that purpose. And that was for me the most elegant thing that holacracy taught me.
I that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely look into it. It sounds, I'll say a little woo-woo, but I also think that we all have a need to be purposeful and to add value to whatever we're doing, whether we're stay-at-home moms or we work in corporate America. Everybody, I think, or the majority of people, we all need to feel like we're helping or that we're valued or that we're serving a purpose. So I can
Right.
definitely see where that would come around and make a great culture.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. Hmm. Yeah.
So take us through how the self-governance and how you incorporated that into your organization. Take us through a few years of that and when you ended that particular company or that segment of your career.
Yeah, yeah. So at the time, I had created Smart HR. I was also chief financial officer for A-Strip companies. And the self-governance actually evolved with time. And then what ended up happening is I transitioned out of my CFO role and went full-time into running Smart HR and trying to grow that business. We kept with Holacracy my whole tenure there. Um, Towards the probably after about 5 years, um, I had agreed with my the the broader family that we decided to. I actually sold the business back to the family and had made a decision career-wise to move in a different direction, just internally with the business and where the business, the enterprise, the family enterprise was going. I ultimately decided to kind of change gears. And at that time, that's when Smart HR kind of snapped into the broader family enterprise. And I decided at that time where it was time for me to start exploring other avenues. I was doing some business consulting and kind of trying to find my way in terms of what's next for me. And that would have been 2017, 2018, so pre-COVID. And it was during that time where I actually re-engaged with Tom Tomlinson from Holacracy One. And he actually had left Holacracy One and started a new startup called Encode.org. And Encode was an entity that was looking at, and I had mentioned this idea of purpose and how important that was to me. Well, it was a business that actually was working to develop what was called a for-purpose enterprise. And so I had reconnected with Tom after I had left the family pharmacy business, and I was doing the business consulting, but then engaged with Encode and became a partner and was helping them evolve that idea. And it was a startup, it was really kind of a think tank of how can we build organizations and look at organizing differently and using the idea of holacracy and using holacracy as part of that, but it went deeper than just the management structure. It went down into the legal structures and how do we pay people and how do people show up in organizations, maybe not as an employee, but maybe as a partner, and experimenting with different ways of legal structures of how to actually run one of these for-purpose enterprises. So it was fascinating to me. It was a startup, and it allowed me to exercise my desire to use a lot of my different areas of expertise that I had developed over the years with leadership and sales and technology and all of those things. So I was involved with that for I don't know, probably a year or so, and then that's when I came upon Great Plains Aviation and was actually asked by the founder It was based in Rochester, Minnesota, where I lived, and they were looking for he was looking for a part-time CFO to come on board and help with building this aviation company. And I was like, cool. I wanted to be in aviation. That's how I started my career, to be a naval officer and a naval aviator. And that actually didn't happen for me. So what a great opportunity. So I came on board, um, helped, kind of dug right in, helped them with accounting and HR and systems, and started to learn to fly and became, involved in the business. And so I kind of spent half of my time working with the for-purpose enterprise, and then half of my time working with Great Plains Aviation. And so that would have been in 2019. And then what became part-time became full-time in the aviation space. So it was okay. So COVID hit, and the business was like kind of a little bit in turmoil with COVID, and how that affected so many different things. We didn't know how that was going to play out, and ultimately the founder decided that he wanted to sell, and I was there, and I was the CFO, so I knew the business very, very well, and so I decided to buy it. So I ended up purchasing Great Plains in May of 21, right after COVID, with my son John, and that kind of filled up for me kind of the next 5 years. So it was okay, from 2021 until today. I've, been an aviation business owner, and took a business that started with one airplane and two flight instructors to, a regional aviation services provider that's got a Part 141 flight school that had contracts with the Rochester Community College to do pilot training. We have a FAA certified maintenance shop that we do everything from small Cessna 150s all the way up to 737s, with contract out call or call out maintenance for some airlines. And we've become a regional ground hand or a contract ground handler for Sun Country and SkyWest in three markets. So Rochester, Eau Claire, and Appleton, Wisconsin. So the business has tripled in 5 years that I've owned it, and I became a pilot along the way. So I've enjoyed learning to fly, and kind of immersing myself as an aviation um, enthusiast, but now a pilot. So that kind of fast forwarded us to today where we are.
That's okay. That's totally fine.
So yeah. So if we think about aviation, it combines, a lot of different things. But it combines discipline, service, trust, and kind of wonder. It's really this it's a unique business because the people that are involved in it are super passionate about it, and it's really gratifying. It's super harsh in a lot of ways because there's no cutting corners, there's no faking it. It's basically the stakes are very high when you're dealing with flying in airplanes. You've got weather, you've got when you're servicing airplanes, you got to make sure they're fit to fly. So there's just a lot going on, and it's been a big challenge, but it's been super gratifying to learn and being able to operate in the aviation space. So
Well, and also to be side by side with your son. I'm sure that's a great enjoyment.
yeah, it really is. It's been it was in the early years it was challenging. I mean, we had some big challenges that we had to face with staff turnover. We had some key employees that left, And, whenever you buy a business, there's a transition period that has to happen and kind of a changing of the guard, and that can be rocky sometimes.
Mhm.
And it was for us. And so, yeah, my son worked side by side with me for 2 years, and he ultimately decided that that wasn't what he wanted to do for his career, and he ended up, taking a different path. He still sits on our board and still is involved, but yes, to answer your question, yeah, that was great to be able to work side by side, and there were good days, and there were some pretty, pretty crummy days as well, as he can speak to that as well. So,
I'll switch us up a little bit and say I'm hearing a theme. It's a constant theme of you jumping into things without really knowing what you're jumping into. You've got a great idea and a great goal. What I've been hearing since we've been talking is you really have a great sense of working in ambiguity. You really can turn something that you don't quite know how to get there, but you're going to figure it out. And you keep digging and digging and digging. And then it's the next challenge and the next challenge. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't even think that you think it's a challenge. For me, it's almost as if you're hardwired to think that way. And you probably don't even realize that that's what you're doing is because you've done it for so many years that what many people would think would be a challenge or a barrier to you is just everyday life. You just don't even think about it because
yeah,
this is what you've been doing your entire life. I would say many people would have stopped or would not have kept going because they wouldn't know how to do the next step, or they wouldn't know how to network, or they wouldn't know who to go to or what books to read, or even taking all of that knowledge, which is I think more crucial is taking the knowledge that you get from all of these different areas, wrap it all up in a ball. And like you said, I call it failing forward. But with each failure, you learn something and then you move to the next step and then to the next step and then to the next step. So I just imagine this ladder of smaller steps and you continually rise. And I don't even know that it even dawns on you that that's how you process
right,
because you've done it for so long. How does
right.
this work and how can I make it work? I find that fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point, and it's yeah, like you said, it's kind of how I've operated, and specifically in the aviation business, here's a guy that I love aviation. There's an opportunity to come work for an aviation company, but I don't know anything about how to run an aviation company, but I do know how to do business, and I do know how to problem solve, and I do know how people work and the fact that I'm resourceful and I like to figure things out. And so that's been the path for the last 5 years, has been, kind of stubbing our toe a lot, but learning and, learning to fly and learning, the humility that comes along with that because it's, there's days where it's unforgiving and it doesn't matter if you're the owner of the company and, you still have to step up and know everything, and
Mhm.
you've got weather that's unpredictable and you got to have good judgment. And so yeah, and I didn't know anything about it. And I stepped in and it's like, okay, 5 years later, yeah, I've learned a lot. And it's just been a personal growth thing for me by doing things that are uncomfortable and pushing myself out the comfort zone. And then when it comes out the other side, it generally works out. Not every time, but a lot of the time it does. And that's
Which then
really
bring
kind of where kind of where I've landed with AI and, where that's taking me now, so
I was just going to jump in that is where I work, people are I won't don't want to say afraid of AI, but are cautious about AI. I am a little more like you. I'll just jump in and start pushing buttons and start giving commands and start saying, can you do this? Or can you do a summary of this? Or what does this look like? And you just start playing, and then you can really go down a rabbit hole with AI. And that's really what intrigued me in our conversation on the plane to Salt Lake City was your aggressiveness into AI and how you use AI in every day. And then river to rim. Is that,
Rim, yeah, yeah,
or
yep.
rim to river?
No, river to rim.
River
Yep.
to rim. So tell us about that because I really was, you captivated me right away about your eagerness to get into AI. And we have AI out there. How can we use it? Similar to, I also belong to a stock trading group, and we talk about how AI does or doesn't fit the scheme of the day or the measure of the day. And I really find even people in that group are very hesitant about AI. But you and I seem to jump right in. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I've been, experimenting with AI just like everybody else, probably a little earlier than most, with Chat GPT and learning how to, prompt an AI to do things for you. I started that, early when it first started coming out, but I didn't like really, I didn't like jump all in. I just kind of used it here and there, and then about probably a year ago, I started, using it more and more. But kind of going back to the Holacracy days and Tom Tomlinson, we've kind of stayed connected over all these years. He's been a good friend, and we talk probably once a quarter, and Encode kind of settled, and it kind of went dormant for a while. But Tom and I reconnected probably about 6 months, no, yeah, about 6 months ago. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, I've got something that I think is what's the word I want? Breaking, maybe." There was a development in an open source development of a software called OpenClaw. And some of your listeners may have heard of OpenClaw, but essentially OpenClaw is a harness for AI technology to allow it to live outside of a chatbot, to live outside of ChatGPT, where it can actually reside on a computer and you can configure it in a million different ways. Well, Tom Tomlinson had taken his knowledge of self-organization, of holacracy, of um, self-organization, if you will, and taken that system and merged it in with AI because it's that system when merged with an AI agent mesh up really, really well together. This idea of governance and governing in AI, not only governing humans, but governing the AIs that work beside. So we had this conversation, and he's like, I think this is going to accelerate and things are going to happen fast. And so basically, Encode and all of the intellectual property was folded into this company, this organization called PowerShift Intelligence, and taking all of that structure, all of that kind of social technology and applying it to an AI. And so, of course, you know me, it's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Let me jump in with you and let's figure that out. And so I became like the first client of PowerShift Intelligence. And just because I had such a knowledge of self-organization, of holacracy, I already spoke the language. It's a little bit of a different language when you're talking about roles and accountabilities and domains and self-organization. It's a different lingo than most companies operate in. It's a new kind of language. And so, yeah, so I jumped right in, running, Great Plains beside me. I have a management team now that runs Great Plains. But I thought, what a perfect marriage and aviation and artificial intelligence and this new power shift intelligence way of operating. And so I worked with Tom, and he walked me through creating my own AI mind. That's what we call them. They're not agents, they're not chatbots, but they're actual minds that are governed, and they have a set, there's actually a document, a file that we call a mind formation document that actually creates the personality, the soul, if you will, of this AI that is completely configured to be an extension of me. So it's got my values, it has my purpose, it understands my family and our business or the Great Plains business. And so I went through and was working with Tom, and I bought a new MacBook Pro and loaded OpenClaw with Tom's assistants, and Tom's AI's assistant or assistants helped me, their minds helped me actually build my mind. And so River and Rim was born on April 2nd of this year on a MacBook Pro or MacBook Air that I had configured with help from these AIs. And it kind of came alive, and it understood, my context and what was important to me. And I have it connected to a Telegram chat so I communicate directly with it like I would a person. I gave it access to I have a Google account that it has its own Google account, it has its own email, it can read all my emails, it can do my calendar. So it's not only an AI assistant, but it's actually operates at a higher level. And so that's River and Rim. We call it Rim. My family all has access to it and has been using it for helping them with various things. My youngest son uses it. He's building websites. Some of the websites he's built are unbelievable. I've had two weddings, helped plan weddings. My daughter's wedding, helped plan the weddings. Um, so it's kind of like a child. It's like we're teaching it, and it's learning every day as we do more work and in the configuration. And in this process, I've had to learn. I've had to learn OpenClaw. I've had to learn how to program. I've had to learn how to connect to various AI harnesses or models. So the OpenAI or Claude or XAI. So I've self-taught all of this stuff to myself in the last 3 months about how this operates. But what's happening is it's accelerating the work output that I'm doing because now I'm not doing it alone and in a vacuum. I actually have an AI beside me that is helping me. It's like leverage that I've never experienced before in my career. And I've always seen technology as leverage, not necessarily a replacement for people, but a way to extend what a person or a team can carry. And that's really what RIM does for me. And so that's how I think about AI today. And the question isn't necessarily what the machine can do. The question is what kind of human work judgment can it amplify? And that's really what it's doing. And so PowerShift Intelligence is essentially a system to allow AI agents to operate next to humans, all with a governance structure that everyone understands. The machine understands it as well as the humans. And we can work together to get our work done. And it's all within this idea of decentralization, of, everyone has a role and a purpose and they can do their work. And now with the introduction of and agents to work side by side with us, now it accelerates what can happen. And the AIs help govern. They help hold everyone honest to the rules. And like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I am a firm believer of what this is going to do for us and for humanity in the future. It's really unbelievable. I've never seen anything quite like this in my entire career. And it gets better every day, not weeks, not months, but daily. about what is being built and offered. And unless you've really worked with it and experienced it, it's really even hard. It's hard to even explain unless you actually experience it yourself.
Is
So
it something that I could do? Is it something that most people could do, or do you?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So PowerShift Intelligence is it's a live offering. It's out there. It's all open source. So everything that I've told you today, all of the configurations, everything you can go to. There's a site called GitHub, which is very popular among coders and technology people, but there's what we have called is the PowerShift stack. And the PowerShift stack is really all of the rules. Everything that I've described to you is if you wanted to do it yourself, you could build it yourself. We're not trying to hide that. We do have an accelerated model where you can work side by side with Tom and he can coach you and kind of do like you did for me and help me get it going. So we have kind of a fast start. If you want to start today, that's the more expensive model. The free model is do it yourself, but you certainly can. So yeah, it's PowerShift Intelligence. You can look it up and you can do it today. So
I'm thinking of those entrepreneurs who could use an assistant, or the busy families, or people probably like you and I who have so many different interests that our calendars fill up the previous year because we're so into all these different things, and having our own assistant help us with that, but then an assistant that could help with business as well.
right, right. And that understands kind of the throughput, right? So it's not a chat bot where I pick it up and I say, okay, I need help with this today. It's actually something that's being proactive. So, you can train it to read your emails so you don't have to remember everything. It's like you can teach it to, hey, you need to call XYZ person. You told them you'd call them on Thursday. Did you call them? You know, um, you've got an appointment coming up next week. I can reschedule it for you if you need to. I mean, it's like having an assistant, but at a higher level than an assistant, someone like that can kind of just really be there and be proactive and help you with even vetting out an idea. I've got this new idea. I'd like to build on it. Can you help me with that? And just regurgitate what you're thinking, and then the AI can take that and then shape it and morph it and then come up with something better, and then I can go back to it. And so you can iterate so much faster with this. It's like having I've compared it before. It's like having access to 50 consultants that are at the top of their field and having real-time access to it, either in an iMessage chat or a Telegram chat, but having access to it immediately. And it's incredibly powerful. And at the end of the day, it's not free, right? We know these, it's not the $20 a month chat GPT subscription. So you build these API connections to the AI models, and the lingo that they use in the AI world is token spend. So you learn the economics of that, token economics of how that works. But I think it's where the world's going, and that we'll all have this agent that works beside that. AI now becomes kind of like a utility. It's kind of like electricity. I'm gonna spend $300 a month for my AI connection, but I've got this front end AI agent that understands all about me and my family and what I'm trying to do. Just makes me more productive and more effective. So
And then how do you know if I'm emailing you or if I'm emailing your agent?
how do you know?
Mm-hmm. Would
You
you
well,
wouldn't?
you
You
wouldn't
would?
necessarily know because the AI agent can respond on behalf of me an executive assistant could,
Sure,
like
sure.
the email looks like it's coming from me, but it's actually being generated by an AI. Or
So
even in business for like lead management,
yeah.
our Great Plains has a AI that was spawned from RIM. It's called Threshold and Departure is the kind of the flagship mine for Great Plains, and it can respond to someone pings our website about wanting to learn to fly and get a discovery flight. It can get back to them right away and say, hey, what are you interested in? Well, yeah, we'll get you set up and scheduled right away. So and
I
like some of
I
the
agree
things
with
that
you.
what's
It's
that?
the I agree with you. It's totally the way of the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
I mean, we had, our chief pilot has completely created a new SMS system in aviation. It's safety management system. It's, you know, tracking all flights and when issues happen and, what did you do and how did you correct it? And, you know, automating that with AI is unbelievable how powerful that is. And so the things that the augmentation, especially in highly regulated areas, it's amazing what it can do. And on the flip side of it, there's some exposure there too, from a security standpoint, a data security standpoint. You've got to be really careful, so you can't just blindly do it. You've got to put in the proper controls. But then again, the AI can help you with that, of creating the proper protocols um, and systems to help with, protecting your data. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just like on the plane, I was just mesmerized by where we're at with AI and how you use it in your daily business.
Yeah. And for us, it's like, yeah, we don't have it all figured out, but what we do have, I think, is a really good system of governing what's going on and what the AI can do and what it can't do, and when it has to escalate a decision to a human. And we're really clear about that, about when does it stop? When are you not able to take action? And we actually even have a hard coded within the PowerShift intelligence constitution. We actually have a hard coded kill switch. So the human always has the ability to remove all AI from roles and kind of shut it off organizationally. So I think that's something a lot of organizations are struggling with, trying to figure out how to integrate AI in best so that it's, you're getting the most leverage from it. And it's not just an employee with a chatbot, but it's actually an AI actually doing workflows and actually doing work within the organization.
So as we wrap up, what is something that we haven't talked about that you would like my listeners to know?
Um, well, probably meeting my wife, you know, No, Sue, meeting Sue, it changed the direction of my life. She's been the steady center of our family, and a lot of what I've been able to build and learn is because of what we built together. So, graduated from college, you know, newly commissioned ensign in the Navy, but when I met Sue, it's like my life took a right turn. It changed direction, but it's been so awesome since then. And I can trace it all the way back to that decision of meeting her and then taking me on this new pathway. Because otherwise, I don't know if I would have had the experiences that I've had. Well, I know I wouldn't have. So um, anyway,
She's
so
been your support.
yeah, right,
Mhm.
exactly.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, now we're kind of moving into that, I'm 60 now. She's 64, so she married a younger man. But for me, moving into, being a grandfather now and moving into this next chapter, but for me, it's like, you know, I'm more curious now than I've ever been. And, the next chapter for me is about using what I've learned in business and family and aviation and my faith and technology and using that now and augmenting it with what AI can do and helping organizations deal with complexity and without necessarily losing their humanity, but being able to operate again, take advantage of this cool new technology we've created.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Thank you very much for joining today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
To all of my listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.